Welcome to another edition of Sound Off Extra here on the official YouTube channel for the Solomonster Sounds Off Wrestling Podcast. This is your WWE TLC 2016 review. Pay-per-view from Dallas, Texas. SmackDown brand pay-per-view just went off the air about half an hour ago with a pair of excellent championship matches, including a just outstanding main event between AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose for the WWE Championship. Including a surprise finish, although if you are a listener of the Sound Off, it might not have been that much of a surprise. We'll get to that a little bit later. But so far, I'm checking the Twitter poll up on my Twitter page at Solomonster, and closing in now on 700 votes as I record this. Overwhelmingly positive response, 81% thumbs up, 19% thumbs down in favor of this show. So SmackDown ending the year here with their pay-per-views on a high note. Also, a new thing that WWE seems very fond of are these crowd reaction shots. We had these throughout the show to the point that it got very annoying. At first it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then they did it again. And 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 they finally found a really good one in the main event when AJ Styles busted at a crazy spot. They got this great audience reaction shot. Most of the time, though, you get people holding their phones up. It's kind of lame. But I guess that's the new thing now. So let's just go through this pay-per-view from beginning to end. There was some news that broke during Talking Smack after the show on the network. On the kickoff show, I will say I did not see the match. I know it was a 10-man tag. It was Apollo Crews, who has in fact been found, teaming with American Alpha and the Hype Bros against Kurt Hawkins, the Ascension, and the Vaudevillains. The Babyfaces won the match here. American Alpha delivering Grand Amplitude to Simon Gotch for the win. Again, I did not see the match, so I can't comment on it. Pay-per-view started, and they introduced us the four-man crew, as it is now on SmackDown. Mauro Ranallo, JBL, David Otunga, and Tom Phillips, the host of SmackDown. And I have to say, I was quite depressed to see Justin LaBar tweeting tonight that he thinks Mauro's days on SmackDown may be numbered based on some things that he's been hearing internally, what's going on inside the company, and also just the addition of Tom Phillips to the announce team. And it was weird to see Phillips added, since him and Mauro, effectively they serve the same role. They're play-by-play guys. They talk about the adverts. They plug certain things. You don't need both of them. Just one or the other is really all you need. So it's very weird when they added Phillips to the whole thing. And, seeing what LaBar was tweeting tonight gets me very worried for the future of Mauro Ranallo on SmackDown. But it would make sense. Phillips is there. They must be grooming him for something. And it would appear it may be Mauro's spot. I don't know everything that LaBar is hearing, but I know he's got his sources. And so the fact that he would go ahead and publicly tweet that makes me worried. I hope that's not the case, because I enjoy Mauro's commentary. He's got his little catchphrases and stuff like Michael Cole and everybody else does, but he's not your same kind of cookie cutter WWE announce type. Maybe that's working against him, if he is in fact, maybe if his days are numbered. I don't know, but that's kind of what I like about him. That, and he's just a pretty freaking good announcer. So if there is some smoke here to the fire, then that may not be such a good thing. We had Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt representing the Wyatt family against Heath Slater and Rhino, opening the show for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Very short match. Only went about 5 minutes or so. And earlier when I recorded episode 472 of the Sound Off, I talked about the tension that's been building between Randy Orton and Luke Harper. A lot of people were very upset last week when Kane pinned Harper. He beat Harper again. It's like the second or third win over Luke Harper recently. And look, I wouldn't be having Kane go out there and beating him anyway. But I look at it and say, let's not get too upset yet, because I see this as leading to something bigger. I think this is part of a bigger story with Randy Orton. I think it's part of the tension that's been building between Harper and Orton. And I was just talking about this earlier today. And so here on this show, as they came out, you could see Luke Harper eyeballing Randy Orton. Wouldn't take his eyes off Orton. In the middle of the match here, we had Orton was about to be gored by Rhino outside the ring. And who comes to his rescue but Luke Harper? Luke Harper takes one for the team. He takes a bullet much the same way Orton did at Survivor Series. He shoves Orton out of the way to protect him, and he eats a gore from Rhino outside the ring. Thing is, Orton had been tagged in. He was the legal man when Rhino got back inside. He gets back inside the ring, and he sees Bray Wyatt doing his creepy spider walk. And he's just staring at him. And as Rhino is standing there staring at him, Orton slithers into the ring. He catches Rhino with an RKO out of nowhere. This is actually, I thought it was a really slick spot. I thought that was very cool. And Orton covers Rhino, and they win the tag team titles. Bray Wyatt's first taste of WWE Gold in over 3 years on the main roster. Or as someone on Twitter corrected me, Silver, since the belts are now gold. But I'm really digging the Wyatt stuff right now with Randy Orton. I gotta say, and it may only last another month or two. Obviously, it's going to come to an end sooner or later, but I'm enjoying it while it lasts. And maybe because they've so badly mishandled Bray Wyatt over the years. They've had these moments where he kind of breaks out a little bit, and sometimes it's his own fault. You know, there have been times where it's not necessarily the company's fault, but Bray's gotten hurt. You know, I don't want to call him injury prone. He's been okay lately, knock on wood, but he's had his fair share of injuries, whether it's the ankle. There was another, actually, I think both times it might have been the ankle. Maybe it was his back once. So he's had a number of occasions where he's gotten hurt, and perhaps it derailed some bigger plan they had for him. But at the same time, the company has mishandled him. And I think it goes all the way back to him losing to John Cena at WrestleMania 30, which is a loss that I still think was the wrong move to make. But you look back at the history of Bray Wyatt since he was called up to the main roster, and you shake your head and you say, man, this guy, he's the closest thing they've got to a modern-day Undertaker. I'm not saying they're exactly alike, but he's got that kind of mystique about him. And Undertaker, through all the horrible feuds, through all the horrible opponents, whether it was Giant Gonzalez or Kamala or this person or that person, the Undertaker was always protected. And I wish they would have extended that same level of protection to Bray Wyatt. They have not. And the big point I'm trying to make here is, one of the things I think I like about this is the fact that Randy Orton is a made man. Randy Orton is a very well protected member of the roster. And so by linking Orton with Wyatt, I think at least for now, even if it is just another month or two, Bray's kind of protected, right? Now he's a tag team champion. Look what happened. He hooked up with Randy Orton. He's got a championship, right? So at least as far as the length of time that these two stay together, at least I can pretty much bet that they're not going to do wrong by Bray Wyatt. Guy's not going to get buried or anything like that. So I think that's part of what I like about it. But I like the whole storyline, and I'm curious to see where it goes. We had Nikki Bella and Carmella. This was a squash that I think Goldberg would be proud of. At least Carmella got a little more offense than Brock Lesnar did. We had Nikki whipping her with kendo stick shots, which looked kind of weak coming off the match we saw last Monday on Raw with Sasha and Charlotte. I just got done talking about that earlier, and Sasha Banks destroyed Charlotte with kendo stick shots last Monday. So coming off of that, whatever it's been 5-6 days later, watching this was more like kendo stick light. But she was, whipping her with it, and Nikki sprayed her with a fire extinguisher. She engulfed her with a fire extinguisher. And then she finished her off with, does she have a name for this finish now? It's not the Rack Attack. I don't know if it's Rack Attack 2.0 or I don't know if it has a name or not, but it's Mark Merrow's old TKO. And she pinned her. And as Nikki was leaving, Carmella gets on the microphone and she reveals, hey, it wasn't me who attacked you at Survivor Series. I wasn't the one who did it. It was Natalya. So Natalya would be the obvious choice. Almost a little too obvious, which makes me think that there may be another swerve or a swerve to all of this. Maybe they could use this as a way to reintroduce Eva Marie, who's supposed to be back any week now. I guess we'll see. We had The Miz and Dolph Ziggler in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. Great match. Great match. These two have great chemistry. You know, I may be sick and tired of seeing them wrestling each other, but they've had a lot of good matches in this feud, and including the one where Ziggler put his career on the line, you know, which had been building for a number of months, and the crowd was invested in it, and great payoff and everything. So we've seen these guys have good to great matches before. This I thought was a great blow-off, if in fact it is the blow-off, and it should be, because I'm just done at this point. I think both guys need to move on. What Ziggler moves on to, if not a heel turn, I'm not really sure. He's just a freaking loser at this point. But Miz retains the championship with not one, but two nut shots, finishing off Dolph Ziggler once and for all. Match went over 20 minutes, so they gave it time. I love the psychology in this thing. Both guys were selling the hell out of knee injuries at different points in the match, which made it harder for them to climb the ladder. There were a lot of instances, including in the main event with Ambrose on this show, where I just hate that, you know, they have to slow down, right? It's so obvious. I mean, there are ways that you can maybe try to make it not so obvious, but then you have guys who just climb and they have to slow down because they're not supposed to win or they're waiting for the next guy. So at least here, both guys had a bum wheel at different points, and so it was difficult for them to climb, and I think it added to the drama of the match. It played into the whole psychology of the whole thing. Maurice never got involved, which she has, I think, in pretty much every other match these two have had. There was a really innovative spot here. Got to give the Miz credit. He was working over Ziggler's leg. He put him in a figure four leg lock in the ladder. The ladder was laid flat. Dolph's leg was caught in the ladder, and Miz put him in the figure four. I'd never seen that before, so that was cool. Before the match, got to backtrack a little bit here. Before the match, backstage, they interviewed Daniel Bryan, who flat out said he wanted to see Miz lose. He has no love lost for the Miz. He wanted to see him lose. Miz called him out on it. During the match, Miz mocked Bryan by doing the yes chant. He did Bryan's drop kicks in the corner. We've seen this before. And then after the match, Miz cut a promo doing, or I should say dedicating, his win to Daniel Bryan, mocking him even more. And then talking smack, I don't know how many of you stuck around to watch that, they literally went off the air with the two of them yelling at each other. They were arguing back and forth, just yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling, and then they just put the copyright on the screen and they faded to black. There has to be some kind of a payoff to this. There has to be. They have to blow this thing off with a match. And I don't mean Daniel Bryan having a competitive match, because, again, they're never going to let him get in the ring and have an actual competitive match ever again. They're just not going to do it. But if you remember, if you listened to the podcast about a week or two ago, there was somebody who wrote in during the mailbag segment who floated a very, I thought, clever idea, kind of bringing everything full circle for Bryan, where this builds to a match at WrestleMania next year in Orlando, with Daniel Bryan beating The Miz in 18 seconds. Very similar type of situation that Bryan found himself in at WrestleMania back when he wrestled Sheamus, where he got AJ Lee up on the apron, he gave her, or actually she gave him a kiss. I think, I don't remember if it was on the lips or the cheek or whatever, and as soon as Bryan turned around, what happened? He got kicked in the face and pinned. Well, this person wrote in and said, why don't they do something similar here? Where Maurice gets up on the apron and she gives Miz a kiss, and Miz turns around, he gets a flying knee, and Bryan pins him 1, 2, 3. And I now look, on the one hand, yes, you would have people who are disappointed if you promote a Daniel Bryan match, first match, and I mean, it would probably be his first match in like a year and a half, and it's over in 18 seconds. I could see where people would be upset about that. But, look, at least it ain't a main event, right? Like Goldberg and Brock. I don't know what to tell you. I think it's a clever idea. I think it's something they could do. I still don't know that they would clear him, because I do think that if they were to promote the match, it would raise a lot of questions that the company probably would not want to answer when it comes to concussions and all that kind of stuff. Plus, they got that concussion suit, all these wrestlers filing suit against them that's still pending. So, do I think the company would go for it? I think because of the concussion stuff, no. But there is precedent for this before. Bret Hart had to retire because of concussions. And when I was talking about this a week or so ago, I forgot to mention this. You guys brought this up, the whole Bret Hart thing. And I was like, of course, Bret Hart. There's Exhibit A right there. Bret Hart, he had the concussions. He had to retire. He had a stroke. He fought back from the stroke. And what happened? They booked a match at WrestleMania between Bret Hart and Vince McMahon. And it was completely lopsided. Bret was not allowed to take any bumps or any blows to the head. It was a complete one-sided ass-kicking. And was it a great match? No, but it also went on forever. It was very uncomfortable. Bret gave him about 13 chair shots. I'm not advocating that kind of match. And not only that, but Bret wrestled The Miz, ironically, and beat him for the U.S. title later on an episode of Raw. So if Bret Hart can do that, to me, this is an idea that could work. At least it's some kind of blow-off for these two. I mean, there is an alternate idea that others have floated, and I'd be okay with this too if they find the right person for it, and that is that this keeps going on for a few more months. It leads into WrestleMania, and Bryan finds somebody to essentially take out The Miz or to kind of represent him. And it turns out to be someone like Shinsuke Nakamura, who we know Bryan is a big fan of and has a lot of respect for, NXT champion, right? The only thing with Nakamura is time-wise, I don't see it working because I don't see them bringing Nakamura up before WrestleMania. I think Samoa Joe is a lock to come up to the main roster. Not to be part of this, but, for example, in the Royal Rumble, I would be kind of stunned if Samoa Joe were to not make his debut in the Rumble. There literally is nothing left for him to do in NXT at this point. Nakamura, I'm not so sure of. There was one other idea I was thinking of. I just put this out there. This wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. What about Sami Zayn? There's been a lot of talk about Sami Zayn. I mean, he's got his own little thing that's brewing now on Raw, him and Mick Foley, and him and Braun Strowman. But Sami has been completely underutilized on Raw. Just no place for him. I mean, they've got the Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens thing going on. You've got Seth Rollins. You've got Roman Reigns. There's just no room at the top at the moment on Raw for Sami Zayn. And there's no indication that he's going to be kind of elevated into that spot anytime soon. I look at a brand like SmackDown and I say, SmackDown seems like it would be a fine place for him to go. People say that about Cesaro as well. I could see both of them going to SmackDown, and maybe SmackDown trade somebody over to Raw. But the reason I bring up Sami Zayn is because he and The Miz have unfinished business going back to Survivor Series. If you remember, The Miz defended the championship against him. It was an inter-brand match, and Zayn got screwed. The Miz cheated to win. Maurice helped him win. And they couldn't follow up on it because they were on separate brands. Well, what if they were to conceive of some idea where Bryan could trade for Sami, and they could then pick up where they left off? At least then there would be some storyline continuity if you want that. So these are just different ideas that I'm floating. If they don't want to do the 18-second thing, I still think the 18-second thing is very clever. And it's very doable and it's very safe. But ultimately, it's up to the company. But they've got to blow this thing. This is obviously going to go somewhere. And I think that would be one logical way for it to go. But if it's not going to be paid off, then this is all just a colossal waste of time. So The Miz cut a promo. Like I said, he cut a promo when the match was over. He ended that promo by saying, "To the victor goes the spoils. I win," he said. And then he planted a wet one on Maurice. So Miz does indeed win. He wins at life. Baron Corbin and Kalisto in the dreaded chairs match, where only chairs apparently were legal. I don't know what would have happened if Corbin, for instance, picked up the ring bell or a table, if that would have constituted a disqualification. I still think it's a stupid stipulation. But they made the most of it, and they had a pretty good match. They were beating the hell out of each other with those chairs. There were some pretty cool spots in there. I forgot the name of that move. It's almost like a Blue Thunderbomb type move, but not really, that Corbin does. It's got a name. I literally just popped out of my head. But there was a great spot where Kalisto, I think, came sliding out of the ring, and he got caught. Corbin caught him right in that move, right on the floor. I thought that was really cool. In the end, though, end of days, on the chairs, Kalisto put up a fight. He did. He was coming off the top rope with double foot stomps and all kinds of crazy stuff. And this was not a squash by any means. This was a competitive match. But in the end, the right man won. That man is Baron Corbin. I saw Corbin on Talking Smack when the pay-per-view was over. I have to say I was very impressed just by his speaking, his verbal skills, his ability to just stay in that character no matter what. I get the impression that the character we see on TV with Baron Corbin probably isn't too far removed from how he is. You know, for example, I don't think that in the back, you know, when he's off camera, he's skipping through the halls handing out hard candies to people. I think he keeps to himself. He probably has a rough edge to him. We saw a little bit of that on that Breaking Ground show, which does have at least some reality to it. Now, this runs counter to Alexa Bliss. It was Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch in a tables match for the Women's Championship. Alexa was on Talking Smack as well. Talk about that in a second. I predicted that Alexa would win the championship, and she did. But this was the most disappointing match on the entire show. Not the worst match. I would give that to, I would say Nikki and Carmella was the weakest. Because up and down, this overall was a really good pay-per-view. So I really can't say there was one horrendously bad, like, dud of a match. Nikki and Carmella would be at the bottom. I think that was the weakest. The tag title match was the shortest, but I thought it was short but good. It didn't overstay its welcome. It was short. It was to the point. Great finish. This went 15 minutes. Or thereabout. Which was probably a good 5 or 6 minutes longer than it probably should have gone. But these two, the thing is, they just never clicked. They just were not on the same page at all. And it's hard enough to do a match like this without all the near falls because of the stipulation, right? There's no pinfalls. There's no submissions. You've got Becky Lynch, who has a submission finish. You can't do any of that stuff. Now, she did put the disarmor on Alexa at one point, but it wasn't like she was going to win the match with it. So when you take away those near falls, it does take something away from the match. Unless you've got all these other big, exciting spots planned. Look at the TLC match in the main event. Look at all the crazy shit that Ambrose and Styles were doing. We didn't see any of that in this match. It was a lot of punch, 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 and then sometimes they would try to do a spot and they were out of place, or it was just very clunky, very sloppy at points. It didn't help that the crowd, you know, the fans thought they were in a library instead of a sporting event. The finish came with both women on the apron. There was a table set up on the floor. Alexa slipped out. She grabbed Becky, powerbombed her through the table to win the championship. I am happy for Alexa Bliss. I've been following her since her early days at NXT, and you could see from the beginning when she was a babyface and she would come out and she would blow the pixie dust to where she is now, how she has evolved, her character in the ring. She's a hell of a lot better than she used to be. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see. I'm happy for her. I think she's been killing it on the mic lately. On the mic, her facial expressions. I mean, she's got that down pat. It's just a shame, that this match could not be better because I've seen both of them have better matches. It's not like they're bad wrestlers. This just was not their best work. And I do think the table stipulation had a lot to do with that. I think it hurt them. But I saw Alexa on Talking Smack, and unlike Baron Corbin, who's always in the zone in that character, Alexa was in tears, which is fine, but she was talking about how I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to win. I didn't expect this. My mom was here. It was her first WWE event. It was so special to have my mom here. It's like I'm watching this saying, how can you hate this woman? She's supposed to be this like real bitch heel, but it's like, how the hell am I supposed to hate her? Completely out of character. And then she kind of morphed into character and was talking about, I don't give Becky any credit. I did this all by myself. It was very jarring, though, I think, at the beginning to see. It was cool to see the raw emotion, but just completely not the Alexa Bliss that you see on TV. It's almost like Talking Smack as much as I like it. I don't think they quite know what they want it to be. It's this weird mix of kayfabe and out of kayfabe, and I don't know. It's fun to watch. I like the show, but it's just I wish they would just decide, okay, is this in character? Is it out of character? It kind of has to be in character, but I don't know. So that was weird. And then we had the main event. AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose in a TLC match for the WWE World Championship. AJ retains the championship in an excellent 30-minute match, thanks to the assist from one James Ellsworth. tipping over the ladder as Dean Ambrose was about to grab the title, causing him to plummet to his doom and crash through 2 tables out on the floor. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, it's because I called this weeks ago on the podcast, specifically because I referenced the finish to the TLC match between Dolph Ziggler and John Cena 4 years ago. If you remember, it was for the Money in the Bank briefcase. AJ Lee was with Cena for a while leading up to the match. And as Cena is up reaching for the briefcase, AJ Lee comes into the ring and she shocks the world by pushing the ladder over and helping Dolph Ziggler beat John Cena. And I said I could see them redoing that exact same spot here in this match. And that's what they did. We had Ellsworth tip the ladder over. He encouraged AJ Styles to get up and climb the ladder, which he did. And AJ Styles retains the championship. This was, like I said, an excellent match, but it was not without some casualties, that being AJ's tights. He ripped his tights in a most unfortunate position on what was one of the cooler spots of the match. So they had chairs. Ambrose had set chairs up in the ring. I think it was Ambrose who set them up. But anyway, Ambrose basically gave him a flipping suplex. So he had him in a suplex position, picked him up, and just threw him. And AJ's body flipped and he fell through the chairs. It looked like it sucked to be AJ. And I believe that is the spot which literally tore a hole in his ass. And you could see the exposed, the exposed cheek. There's a very cheeky champion here in this match. The ass that runs the class. And unfortunately, it stayed that way for the rest of the match. It actually got worse. I was trying not to look at it, and it was funny because they were trying not to shoot it. But how do you not? You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible not to. I thought this would have been hilarious if they would have busted out the old video distortion that Jack Tunney used on Ric Flair's title back in the day, and they would have tried, just to watch them try to keep the little dot, right? They didn't do that, though. That would have been funny. So it was unfortunate, but they kept the match going, and the fans behaved themselves. In fact, this match got a whole bunch of "This is awesome" chants as the match went on. There's a great spot where Ambrose laid Styles out on the announce desk, climbed one of these tall-ass 15-foot ladders, dove off with an elbow smash. That was cool. The most impressive, most suicidal spot of the match came with Dean Ambrose laid out on a table. Now you got to go to the opposite side. So this is the side of the ring by the aisleway. And this table is a decent distance from the ring. This is not right up against the apron. I mean, this is right at the foot of the aisle. And he's got Ambrose on this table. Styles climbs back into the ring. So I'm thinking, okay, he's going to climb to the top rope. But no. Oh, no. He's setting up for a springboard. And he busts out a springboard 450. And he nails it perfectly. Because he is, in fact, the best wrestler in the world. People were saying that about him some people were saying about him when he was in TNA. People were saying that about him when he was in New Japan. Now he's been in WWE for almost a year. And I would still say it. That AJ Styles is, in fact, the best wrestler in the world. Everything he does is so crisp. And it's so perfect. And he bumps around like a madman. And now the way he's developed his very arrogant character on TV, the guy's the total package. I mean, the only thing you can say, it's too bad he's not 6'2", or, Vince McMahon would want to make love to the guy. But aside from that, there ain't nobody better than him. If he wasn't already the MVP of this company for the year, he cemented it with this performance here tonight. Not to take anything away from Ambrose, but AJ was on point with a hole in his ass. So that was a crazy spot. That spot, I saw him do that in a television match on Impact. I want to say it was against Bully Ray. But I remember him doing that, and if it was Bully, he moved off the table, and AJ crashed and burned through the table. I thought he killed himself. And that was just a television match on Impact. At least here, it was a pay-per-view in a much bigger building. I still think he's crazy to do that, but at least he had a bigger audience for it this time. But that's what it reminded me of. I remember seeing him do that on Impact in just a random match, And here he is busting it out in the main event of a pay-per-view, and it was, in my opinion, the spot of the night. So we come to the end of the match here. They're both climbing the ladder, and James Ellsworth rises from the dead. He's got a neck brace on, because the last time we saw him was last Tuesday on SmackDown. He got Styles clashed on the floor off the steps. And I wasn't even sure he'd be on the pay-per-view because it seemed too quick. I mean, the guy, after a move like that, he got carted out in an ambulance. You're going to put him back on TV less than a week later, but they did. So I'm not quite sure why they did that angle then on Tuesday, because I would have kept him out at least a week. But there he was, walking down to the ring in the neck brace, and AJ immediately attacks him. He goes to give him another Styles clash on the steps. Ambrose breaks it up. Ambrose actually gives him dirty deeds on the steps. DDT'd him head first right on the steps. Crowd's going crazy now. They're telling, they want Ambrose. They think Ambrose is going to win the championship. I could see this coming from a mile away. And this leads to the finish with Ambrose being tipped off the ladder by Ellsworth and AJ coming back in, climbing the ladder, and collecting his championship. AJ Styles retains the title. James Ellsworth screws over Dean Ambrose. And that is how they went off the air. It was a little weird because they got a shot of Ambrose. Ambrose has this weird way of selling where if you, like the average wrestler, if he took this big move, he'd be knocked out. Ambrose just has this gaze, right? His eyes are open and he's just kind of staring into space. He takes this big bump through these two tables and they get a close-up of his face and he's just laying there with his eyes open. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Because AJ's still laid out on the floor. It's going to take a while for him to climb back in. I mean, Ambrose looks like he's just hanging out. When they went back to him later on, his eyes were closed. So that was a little weird. But I thought it was just an excellent main event. Probably the best match that the two of them have had. And they've had some really good ones. But again, just a star, not even a star making. He's already a star. But just a masterful performance by AJ Styles with, again, the unfortunate wardrobe malfunction. I'm sure in the future he will be wearing a little something underneath his tights from now on. At least I hope so. So overall, I just thought this was a thumbs up show. Great effort from the SmackDown crew. And I'm checking the poll again right now. It has not changed as we approach 1,000 votes. Very shortly after the pay-per-view has ended here. And it is still 81% thumbs up, 19% thumbs down. That's got to be one of the best ratios of the year. I can't say it's the best because they've got about 5,000 pay-per-views a year now. I can't remember all of the polls that I put up. I know Survivor Series sure as hell didn't do this well. And I question whether or not Roadblock will in a few weeks, but thumbs up show. Now, the other part of the idea, when I pitched it, it wasn't just that Ellsworth would shove him off the ladder and would go heel and align with Styles. It was that he would essentially align with Styles and become a lackey for him. So think Ralphus and Chris Jericho back in the day in WCW. Something along those lines. But he would become his lackey. And it does not appear that that is the case. Because Ellsworth was on Talking Smack. Daniel Bryan was taking him to task. Very upset about his actions at the end of the show. And Ellsworth explained it like this. This was not so much a proper heel turn as much as it is the fact that the guy is delusional. Because his rationale, as he explained it, was, I've beaten AJ Styles 3 times. And the last time I beat him, I earned myself another shot at the WWE Championship. I've got a title match coming to me. Well, I want to face the guy who I beat 3 times. That's AJ Styles. So I did what I had to do to make sure that AJ kept the championship. I just talked to Shane McMahon. I'm getting a championship match on Tuesday. So they've already set up a title match with Ellsworth and AJ Styles for SmackDown this Tuesday. And when they said, well, what about Ambrose? He's your friend. You screwed your friend over. He said, well, nah, he'll understand. He'll understand. He would have done the same thing. It's cool. It's in the spirit of competition. Now, obviously, I'm sure Ambrose is not going to be so kind. Ambrose is going to want to tear this guy a new one. But he's playing this delusional character. He only did it because AJ Styles is the guy that he beat. He wants to face the guy that he beat because that gives him the best chance to win the championship, which in theory makes sense. Kind of smart, right? Even though he's going to get his ass handed to him. So, unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going with the lackey part of the idea. But anyway, that is the rationale for him doing what he did. So, in case you missed Talking Smack, I just gave you the quick summary of of what happened, the big news coming out of it. That sets up a title match for SmackDown on Tuesday. Bryan was kind of surprised that Shane McMahon would go behind his back and just make the match. He said he's going to have to talk to Shane about that. So anyway, that's the direction that they're going in. If you have any interest in checking out some of the other videos here on the channel, we've got a bunch of bonus content up on the channel. Generally, I post these post-pay-per-view wrap-ups, any extra interviews that I do, reviews of anything that... It's all bonus content. The full podcast episodes go up every Sunday on the Solomonster.com. You can get it on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play Music, a whole bunch of platforms. If you've never checked out an episode before, check it out. I think you might like it. You can follow me on Twitter at Solomonster. I'll be back, I guess, in a couple of weeks. I'll be doing another one of these. So hit the subscribe button. Keep it locked in here for more content. Until next time, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a great week. And we will see you back here real soon for another Sound Off Extra. Till then, take care, guys.